Welcome to the Libraries and Weight Rooms podcast, your trusted source for simple strategies to improve your mental and physical fitness. Throughout this podcast, we will discuss how you can manage your mental health by practicing mental fitness, building emotional resilience and curiosity to handle life's challenges. We'll also highlight the crucial link between physical fitness and your overall mental well-being. My name is DJ Ligori, and I want you to realize that you are not alone with this challenge. Thank you for taking the time to listen, and welcome to today's episode. I once met a man who was completely blind, and I got to spend about 30 minutes with him, and he had to be one of the most positive and joyful people I had ever met in my life. Even though he didn't tell me this up front, I picked up on it as I spent more time with him. When I dropped him off, I sat in my car and I just smiled. And I didn't even really know why. I felt like I had a completely new perspective on challenge. And I realized that he had just taught me a lesson that I would never forget. I would like to welcome all of you who are listening to this podcast to the Libraries and Weight Rooms podcast, episode number 111. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to listen to the show. Boy, do I have a great story leading up to this podcast and the topic that we're going to talk about today. So right now I'm recording this. It's 6:17 p.m. at night. I started recording this around 2:30 p.m. And I realized that halfway through the recording, the microphone was not working. And so I spent the next hour trying to figure out why the microphone wasn't working. And I then had a client call at 4 o'clock. And then after 4 to 5, after I spent another hour trying to figure out why this microphone wasn't working. And eventually, I have no idea how, but it just started to work. And so, in a funny way, I think everything happens for a reason, right? Today, we're actually going to talk about the way that we choose to look at challenge. And I can genuinely say, throughout this whole challenge of me just trying to figure out why this wasn't necessarily working, I was thinking about this podcast. And I was thinking about the individual that I'm going to talk about in this podcast and what he taught me and how it helped me deal with this challenge that I just faced. So, 2 months ago, I was asked to do a favor for a business colleague of mine. The favor was I had to drive an individual from one location to another because this individual could not see. He was blind. And I said, yes, I will gladly help with this, with your favor. I'm curious, though, what is this individual's deal? Why do you need me to do this? The blind individual, he was a speaker, and he was talking about business strategy. And basically what I needed to do was I needed to drive this speaker to his next speaking engagement after he was done with my business partner's speaking engagement to his group. And I immediately was super curious, thinking, wow, a blind individual who, obviously that is a huge challenge and huge obstacle to overcome, is talking about business strategy. Like, how did he get to the point of having that much courage and that much confidence and that much knowledge and awareness about business strategy to actually be a speaker about it? I was immediately curious and immediately it piqued my interest. So I was very interested in helping out with this favor. So I go to the first speaking engagement and I pick up the individual. I introduce myself to him and he introduces himself to me and he puts his left arm around my right arm. Like he kind of links it in. You guys can kind of picture that. And we start walking towards the door and I realize there's like a little lip where like the mat is prior to going into the door. And he has his stick and he hits the mat with the stick and he immediately realizes it's the mat. He's probably used to doing this. And he steps over it. And I was watching him the whole time, and I said, hey, there's a mat, there's a door, there's this. And he goes, I know. He goes, I got it. And I was just super fascinated with how well he was kind of managing, moving and things like that. So we get into my vehicle and we start driving. And I ask him, we're talking about life, we're talking about the education system, we're talking about podcasting, we're talking about Navy SEALs, talking about all of these great things that I love to talk about. And I said, I'm curious, what should I know that I don't know now? Like, what can you teach me that could drastically change the way that I think when we part ways today? And he said, DJ, I want you to think of these 3 things. He said, ask yourself these 3 questions and see where they take you. He said, where are you? What do you want? And why do you want that? So as soon as I ended up getting to the second location, I immediately texted myself, where are you? What do you want? Why do you want that? Because I knew I was going to learn something. And we parted ways, and I was very grateful and very appreciative that I had the opportunity to successfully get him to his next speaking engagement and learn along the way. I knew I was going to learn along the way. That's why I think I was so excited. And I've wrote actually a couple emails about this before, and I've gotten a lot of really great feedback from this story and just kind of what it taught me. And so I realized that when I had gotten back into my car, I was smiling, and I didn't know why I was smiling. Like, I had just this energy that was flowing throughout my body, and I realized that he had not only had he taught me those 3 questions that were important, but he also, without knowing it, taught me about challenge. And he taught me about how we get to choose our own challenges. It's a choice of what we decide to be difficult in our life. I mean, think about this. Imagine if you couldn't see. Like, imagine if you were blind. You would never be able to see your kid's face light up on Christmas morning. You'd never be able to see your husband or your wife's face when you told them that you loved them. Or you'd never be able to see the beautiful outdoors and nature. You'd never be able to see your own reflection or what you looked like. Yet what I realized was this individual who was blind, he wasn't interested in having those things bother him. He wasn't interested in that challenge. He had other things to do. He had people to impact. And all of that came into my awareness when I just sat there in my car. I was once in a coaching program where I was asked, when did I give up? And we all have given up on certain things in our life. We all have given up on certain habits that we wanted to create, and it got too hard. We've all given up on certain goals that we wanted to achieve. We've all given up on dreams and aspirations or even projects that we wanted to tackle or hobbies that we wanted. We've given up before. Yet, the thing that I realized was when I experienced this man and I experienced how positive he was, I experienced how happy he was, I realized that he wasn't choosing this as a challenge. And that as human beings, we have the agency that we get to choose what is challenging in our lives. It's a matter of perception. A couple episodes ago, I talked about the Choose Your Hard poem, where if you choose fast food, it's going to be hard to put your pants on because you're going to be obese, right? If you consistently choose fast food, if you consistently don't watch your diet, if you consistently don't exercise and make conscious, healthy decisions when it comes to food, it is going to get harder. And that ultimately was a choice. It was a choice that you made. Right? If you choose to go on social media every day, that is mental McDonald's. That gives you the opportunity to compare yourself to others if you are not mentally suited to handle that tool. you don't know exactly how to use it in a proper way that can serve you and help you instead of sabotage you, cause you stress, cause you anxiety, right? So we get the point. We are in control of what we deem challenging. Our lives are really a reflection of how we choose to see it. When I was with this man, he was choosing to serve. He was choosing to impact people. He was choosing to not let the fact that he could not see anything not alter his life in any way. And the way that this connects to mental fitness is we make choices on how to handle stress, on how to handle anxiety, on how to handle feeling uncomfortable. And we can make a choice to know exactly what to do when adversity hits. That is literally the definition of mental fitness, is knowing how to handle adversity and challenge when it hits you. Right? We can make a choice to be accountable for how we respond to those emotions. Instead of saying, oh, I'm overwhelmed, I'm beyond stressed. Right? Okay, well, what are we doing to manage that overwhelm? Or what are we doing to manage that stress that we're feeling? We are in control of what we do now. And you can adapt to ultimately anything. And you can in turn then create new habits. Right? So when you feel stressed, ask yourself, well, what does this really mean? Or what are my emotions trying to tell me? Emotions are a guidance system. Emotions are really the result of us giving meaning to something. So for example, like one of the things that I've recently been doing, and I actually didn't even realize I was doing this until I did it a couple times in one day because there were a couple stressful things that I was dealing with. I realized that when I got stressed, I looked up at the sky and I would sit quiet. And after in last episode, I mentioned how I would like to do some breathing, right? Just to kind of calm myself down, get my thinking back to center. I realized that I was looking up at the sky to think about, is there a bigger picture here? Maybe I don't see it, but I'm going to believe that there's a bigger picture here. And some higher power, whether you want to call it God, the universe, higher energy, I would ask it, I would say, what are you trying to tell me right now? What's going on here? And that ultimately helped me handle that stress and handle that anxiety, and that was ultimately a choice that I made. Mental fitness is about making specific choices about how we decide to handle challenge in our life instead of letting that challenge completely cripple us. What happens is we end up controlling the situation. The situation stops controlling us. And this is what it means to be unfuckwithable. We're adaptable. We're curious. We're accountable. Challenge hits and you know what to do. You know what to ask yourself. You know how to manage the situation in the best that you can control. And you become unfuckwithable. Because you're choosing what ultimately is going to stress you out. And don't get me wrong. There are things in life that are really difficult to quickly choose better thought patterns around. I completely agree. What I'm saying is eventually, once we get to a point of digesting that problem, understanding the problem, we then make a choice on how we want to move forward. Instead of us always saying, oh, I'm stressed, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I'm overwhelmed, I lack self-confidence. What if we just focused on the next choice that was ultimately going to move us in the direction that we wanted to go? What I realized was when I was sitting in my car smiling after I had had this interaction with this man, that blind guy was unfuckwithable. And he inspired me. All right, so I want us just to kind of think about that term in your life. I know it's a buzzword, right? Being unfuckwithable is our ability to ultimately choose better reactions to challenge, which is how we become more mentally fit. All right, so in conclusion, the 3 questions that I was asked: where are you? What do you want? Why do you want that? Number 2, what we choose to believe will determine how we experience our lives. And number 3, when we make a choice to stay curious, adapt to challenges, and hold ourselves accountable to our actions, we increase our mental fitness and we ultimately become unfuckwithable. This is a favor that I will never forget. And I want to say thank you to the individual who asked me to do this favor. And I want to say thank you to the blind individual. I'm trying to be respectful of people's names here and things like that. Thank you to the blind individual who taught me this very valuable lesson. We choose how we respond to challenge. It's on you. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's episode, number 111. Let's see if we successfully recorded this one. I'm hoping we did. And I'm hoping that you got some value out of today's lesson as well. Thank you so much for your time. And until next time, have a great week. We'll talk to you guys soon. We'll see you. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Libraries and Weight Rooms podcast. If you received something interesting from today's episode, we would kindly appreciate if you could leave us a rating or review, or even share this podcast with someone you believe needs to hear its message. The Libraries and Weight Rooms brand is a division of our parent company, Acres of Diamonds, where we are on a mission to end mental suffering through mental fitness. If you would like to learn more about our mission and support this cause, please visit our website at www.youracresofdiamonds.com. Take care, keep leading, and we will talk to you soon.